Hello everyone, and welcome to our session today on Microsoft Power BI with NAV and Business Central. And joining us today is Jeff Pergolski from Innovia Consulting. And before I pass it over to Jeff, I would like to remind you that this session is being recorded and it will be posted to our on-demand webinar library later this week for you to review and share with anyone. And if you do have any questions, we ask that you please type those into the questions box and we will get them answered at the end of the session. And now I will pass it on to Jeff to kick off our presentation.
All right, thank you, Angie, and thanks everyone for joining. We are going to take a quick, maybe 45-minute pass at Power BI. We've got a lot of ground to cover, so we're going to get going right away. I've got a medium slide deck, but I think a lot of the questions we get about Power BI are about some of the licensing and stuff. So I'm gonna touch on that because that seems to be the number one thing. Again, that's me. Contact information, phone number, and email. Please feel free to reach out. So let's just start with real quick. What does Microsoft say Power BI is? Business analytics service. Basically, it's a visual reporting tool and that you can collaborate and share. Depending on the license, that's a little foreshadowing. And you know, the cool thing about it is that it scales across your organization, and it gives you built-in security. So you know, you can be confident in knowing where the data exists and knowing who can access it. So that's what Microsoft says about it. Also important, what do others say about it? This is the Gartner Magic Quadrant as it relates to business intelligence, and Microsoft has, you know, Power BI has been around for about 5 years now, but they are, you know, ahead of Tableau in terms of the leader space in Square in the quadrant. They are sort of the definitive business intelligence solution, especially if you're a Dynamics customer. So excuse my dog. She likes to let everyone know that she's involved, and after being gone for 2 weeks, she's excited to have me back at my home office. So Power BI, here is just a little bit of a visual to show. It's a collection of software services, apps, and connectors, basically that work together to turn potentially unrelated sources of data into coherent, visually immersive, and interactive insights. So that is truly the power. See on this graphic, there's a lot of Microsoft logos there, but there's also non-Microsoft information, and that can all be combined into single, kind of a single pane of glass that the real power of Power BI is unleashed at that point. It's not just to make you know, your Business Central or Dynamics NAV data visually intriguing. It's combining stuff to get you there. The other thing that is important is that this tool can be really simple and easy and fast, and you can use it to create really quick insights from something as simple as an Excel spreadsheet or some other local database, but it's also robust and enterprise grade. So it's ready for extensive modeling and real-time analytics and custom deployments. It's got an API you can write to. You can use, you know, you can push data into it, extract data out. It's goes from the real little guys to the real big guys, and because of that, it at times can get a little complicated. But we're going to try to break it down into the various pieces that that you care about, and essentially. These are the three main ones. You've got Power BI Desktop, which is a desktop application, obviously, that you would download to your machine. It's a free download, and you can use that and create visualizations with that. Then there's the Power BI service, and that's probably the most common way that people use it. If you're on a Dynamics, especially a hosted Dynamics solution, all of that information already exists in Microsoft's cloud, so it's just a matter of clicking a button to connect to it. and so it's really super easy. You lose a little bit of the power that you get in the Power BI desktop solution, but it's made to be really convenient. And then last but not least, Power BI Mobile. I'm going to attempt to show that on my phone, just to because this is made for your entire organization. So certain people that are maybe business analysts in your organization are going to want to have all the features of Power BI available to them. They'd probably be working with the Power BI desktop solution, the consumers of data, Power BI service for them, and maybe you've got salespeople or mobile workers that are only going to be looking at this through their phone, and so Power BI Mobile is for them. So these three elements are designed to let people create, share, and consume business insights in the way that serves them or their role most effectively. There's also something I left off here, which is Power BI Report Server, which allows you to publish Power BI reports to an on-premises report server after creating them in Power BI Desktop. And maybe from a security standpoint, you want to have all of your data as well as your reports exist inside your firewall. There is a solution for that with Power BI Report Server. And so, your role really determines your role within the organization, determines what you're going to, which of these solutions you're going to use. Again, for consumers, you're primarily going to use this Power BI service. For content creators, probably Power BI Desktop, but it could depend on, your role. You might be wearing a lot of hats in your organization, and you might be doing all of the above. So to start off with, we're going to look at Power BI Desktop. So again, it's free, installs on a local computer, and basically the most common uses for Power BI Desktop are the people that want to first of all connect to data. So you can connect to data through the Power BI service online, but if you're going to set up multiple connections, that's easier to do in Power BI Desktop. Also transforming and cleaning data. So working from the desktop application, pulling it down. Maybe you're pulling down data into an Excel spreadsheet and deleting a bunch of columns, and then importing that data through Excel, because it's a tool that a lot of people are familiar with already. All of that can be done through the Power BI Desktop service. And traditionally, from a role perspective, the people that are most often responsible for working with data in this way are the business intelligence professionals or business analysts, and the next one is, so it's the most powerful tool for manipulating data, and it is the starting point from anything that for the most part you want to publish or share. And we are going to get into Power BI Desktop here in a second. Then there's the Power BI service, as I mentioned. So this is as an end user or consumer, this is probably what you would use. This you'd work with a service to review and interact with content, but it's got some limitations in terms of how much you can massage the data that exists here. So then, not to confuse things anymore, but there's also a Power BI embedded. As I mentioned, there's an API with Power BI, and you can get to this, Power BI embedded is actually a service that exists in Azure. And let's say you want to embed, you're going to create a Power BI report off of your sales data, and you're going to publish it on a website, on your own website that has nothing to do with your Microsoft Office 365 instance. You'd use the Power BI embedded code with kind of Azure to host to act as intermediary. And I'm already getting a little bit too far down in the weeds, so I just want to make you aware that that's possible. And then, just from the standpoint of what can be done with Power BI, besides you can actually create custom visuals. There's something within your organization, like I look at the pictures here, this chord graph, and so these, you can add custom visuals to Power BI. As you'll see shortly, there's a ton of visuals that are already included in the product. But if one of those doesn't fit exactly what you want, you can search for custom visuals in the Office 365 store in App Source, and there's a bunch that are free, and then there's even some that are paid for that people have created and are reselling in the store, and you've got all of that available to you to use for creating content that you feel is valuable. From an administration standpoint, there's an admin portal, and what you can I think the most important part of this is sort of the usage metrics, because some of the Power BI stuff that you look at has costs associated with it. A lot of it is free, but for people who are really going to leverage the solution, it is there are some paid for SKU. There's some Office 365 SKUs, and that seems to have been changed over the last few years. So if you haven't looked at Power BI for a year or two, the licensing things have changed. But so on the admin portal, there's usage metrics. You can deploy your users from here, although most of that is done through your Office 365 admin portal. But you can put on capacity settings. You can set security for your organization. So that's just something I wanted to mention as well. We're not going to get into a deep dive on Power BI administration, but it is a tool that certainly is pretty straightforward, and especially if you're familiar with the Office 365 admin area, you're going to be really comfortable in the Power BI one. So now the big question is, as you start to imagine this, which Power BI solution do you need? And of course, a big part of that is how much does it cost? So basically, there's three different solutions here. The Power BI desktop solution is free, and so you can use that. You can pull in data from anywhere you want and create all these super awesome reports. Now, if you want to start sharing those reports with other people, which you probably would want to do, then you have to get to the point where you're paying for something. And in this case, Power BI Pro is $9.99 per user per month, and it allows you to share and collaborate, and essentially build dashboards that deliver a real-time view of business data, keep up to date automatically, even with on-premises sources, collaborate on shared data, and package content and distribute to users via apps. So that is that's the one that most people that are serious about leveraging Power BI get into. And then on the right, for large deployments, you've got Power BI Premium, and that you're sharing data with users inside and outside your organization without purchasing a per user license. So sort of in the way that you could buy, or you still can buy, SQL licensing, and you could have that as a SQL user, or you could buy the per processor license and open it up to unlimited connections to your SQL database. The large scale deployments with Power BI Premium give you that, and then it's capacity pricing, and you're paying per node per month, and I'll just give you an idea of what that looks like. But I would say that I don't know of any of our customers that are using Power BI Premium, although any of them that are using Power BI seriously have a handful of Power BI Pro users within their organization. So the differences between Pro and free is, that's an important thing to understand. And basically, as you are sharing content between Pro and free users, so in a typical organization, it's got 20 Business Central users. Maybe you've got, in kind of the way that Jet reports from a reporting standpoint, if you've got 20 people, probably almost all of those 20 people want to see reports of some sort, not all the same reports, because that would be too easy, but they all want to see some reports. So they're all going to be a viewer or a consumer of data. in the Power BI world, they can get by with just the free Power BI that is included in just about every Office 365 SKU. So they have that free ability to consume, but who's going to create the content? Those people, have to pay. And if you're going to create and share a Power BI dashboard with your organization, you need to have a Power BI Pro subscription. What happens when you create so there's some extensive content that you get the ability to use for a pro user that a free user doesn't have the ability. So if you create one of these visualizations that has a really complex pro feature loaded visualization, you are going to and you share that, the people you share it with will get this notification that says this contains pro content, and if you don't have the right subscription. So that's very easily tested, and Microsoft has some pretty good documentation around that. My recommendation is always creating this report and sharing it, and then sharing it with a user who doesn't have a pro, so you make sure that you haven't included anything in there that is going to force them to buy it. Because I mean, it's Power BI is a solution. If you've got 5 people in your organization that need it, that need the pros, you're spending $50 a month for it. That's not terribly expensive. But if everyone in your organization needs it and it's $200 a month, that's a lot bigger question. So in terms of the Office 365 SKUs that include Power BI Pro, basically I've got it highlighted here in yellow, but Office 365 Enterprise E5 is really the only one that includes the Pro version of it. So when you start to add up, the different SKUs for Business Essential and Business Premium, what comes with those SKUs, you can figure on $10 of the E5 SKUs is included, is the Power BI Pro license that comes with it. From a per user license comparison, just the pro feature, so you can connect to the same data sources with free. There's no limitation there. Sort of like some of the other Microsoft Power Apps like Microsoft Flow, what you can connect to. There are premium connectors that require that you get a more expensive version of Microsoft Flow to connect to, and that's not the case in Power BI. There's no limitations with the free version on what sort of data sources you can connect to. You can publish to the web in either one, so that's mildly helpful in terms of the free version. If you're going to share it with people, then you start to have some limitations. You can export the same way to PowerPoint, Excel, and it's like a CSV file. But when it comes to the bottom part of this SKU, like what you can, oops, sorry, I prematurely moved forward. The embedded APIs and controls, collaborating, peer-to-peer sharing, creating app workspaces, and the Analyze in Excel and Power BI Desktop. Those are limiting factors from the free perspective, I guess. So you definitely want to go pro there. So basically that, seems pretty straightforward, right? Like it's pro or it's, I mean, unless you're a really big organization, it's going to be pro or free, and you just have to determine which pro users you need. But then, like when you make it more complicated, you've got the premium stuff here that, like we've got an example in Microsoft's Contoso organization, but it's giving you, this premium capacity is, you can have users that are sharing premium capacity, and then just the standard shared capacity that and this is really probably more than like 95% of our customer base would use, but it is important to understand how the premium capacity models work, if that's something that you're considering. From from a refresh standpoint, you've got if you've got a something that needs to be refreshed, like you can see the refresh rate for Power BI Premium is 48 refreshes per day. So that can be scheduled, but essentially it's every 30 minutes you're updating information. And just standard shared capacity, it's a refresh rate of 8 per day. And there's some other stuff, but just to kind of settle you all down, the here there is, there's a calculator for to approximate costs, and here I put in a 50 user organization that how will you interact. So they break it down. You've got 10 pro users, 20 frequent users, and 20 occasional users. From that, they recommend a node of P1, and so they've got 10 pro licenses. So from a user perspective, you've only got 10 pro licenses, so that's going to cost you $100 a month for that. But the P1 node, where you've got priority processing and handling of your data, because you're pushing a lot of it out, is $4,995 a month. So if you just so you're if you get to the point where you're like, hey, we really need to consider Power BI Premium, it's pretty expensive. This is the capacity nodes note in terms of like a bunch of infrastructure techie metrics in terms of what you get, but the P1 here in the middle, that's the one that is that they recommend for just about every scenario. I went and put a scenario in there of like 2, but that ended up it's $5,000 for a P1, and it gets more expensive pretty much linearly as you go up from the P1. So premium, I guess the point to remember here, premium's pretty expensive if you need it, but it is there. And as I said at the beginning, this is a tool that exists for both small businesses and enterprises as well. So now that we've got through the boring stuff, let's get to the connections. I know that we had someone actually that had a specific question about how do you connect it to NAV. So so from the starting point, you've got in Power BI, you get the ability to connect with apps, and clicking the Get App button is what is as easy as it is to connect to NAV. So once you do that, it's this is what pops up over here on the right, the Dynamics NAV button, and clicking that highlighted Get link gets you there. In terms of which versions of NAV will connect to Power BI, basically any version that, if NAV is running on SQL, because Power BI will connect to a SQL database and connects through OData, that platform, that means that you can connect to, I think OData has been in SQL since 2007, so the last 12 years. So anything that's running SQL 2008 or later, you should be able to. Of course, there are some security and permissions, and some, potentially some, depending on where you're grabbing this from. You need to have access if you're running it locally on your machine. You just need to have the appropriate network access. But once you create that, this is what this is what you're given. You need to paste in the OData feed URL, and once you've got that in there, again, even though there's a bunch of authentication methods, I've been fighting this for 3 or 4 years. Basic authentication is the only way to go. Use username and password of a NAV admin account that gives you and I guess it wouldn't necessarily have to be an admin account, but you do need to have an account that gives you the access to the tables that you're hoping to expose through Power BI. So you get the NAV app from the Power BI Center, and we'll go in and poke around in there a little bit shortly. Enter in the appropriate URL, username and password, and it starts to pull back. You do have to make those OData feeds available in NAV, but I will show you and essentially this is what you get, and a nice, really pretty visual. The other thing that we were talking about besides NAV is Business Central, and as you can see, there are here I just did a search in App Source for apps for Power BI, searched on Business Central, and there's already 10 predefined sort of content packs for Power BI that come out of the box for Business Central. So, everything from purchase invoices to vendor lists and sales order lists. So, so it's even easier in Business Central, especially if you are running Business Central in the cloud on Microsoft's hosted platform, but just as almost just as easily, with the exception of having to kind of connect through your firewall potentially to the SQL database that exists in your on-premise Business Central solution. So essentially, system requirements. So for Business Central SaaS, all you need are permissions for web services to retrieve the data, and there's a bunch of already pre-made reports that exist in. Sorry, let me get back here. So on the Role Center, there's there's CRM reports that are already built into Business Central, so sales opportunities, and then there's from the finance side, there's Power BI Finance, Excel job listings. There's the sales dashboard and list page reports for like item sales and the customer history. And we'll jump into that real quick. But there's a whole bunch that's already just like pre-configured in Business Central, and you also have the ability to create your own custom embedded Power BI reports. So those. Here's an example of one that we created, but you've got the ability here through visualizations and fields to create a specific data set that you want to analyze in Business Central, and then put that create that visualization, and then define the parameters of the reports. And I mean, they're like, depending on where it's located, you see I've got the width and height here at 325 by 310, which is where it fits on the page, but you got to be cognizant of that. And essentially, once you create it, the process works by, and I'm going to leave my slide deck here, so let me escape the slideshow, and then I'm just going to, let's see here. Drag something over, and so I'm going to get, this is so now I'm showing Power BI desktop, and if I am just to kind of walk you through what we're doing here, I've just created a let me just start from the beginning. So I want to get some data, so I'm going to create a new Power BI report, and it's loading here on my other screen, so we'll just give it a minute. It's initializing the Power BI data model, and all right, so so here's the even though I've already got it launched, I'm going to do a new one. It remembers what you've recently connected, so once you create a connection, you don't have to keep doing it. I'm doing it for the purpose of demonstration, but so now I want to get some data, and I want to get some data from just a minute here, it will not move. Let me move this one over. Okay, so I want to get data, and where am I going to get it from? So these are all the I could have some data sets. I could connect directly to SQL if I've got a CSV file, or I've got a web. Ultimately, I'm going to go to an OData feed, but there's a even more elegant way to grab that. And so I'm looking at the Get Data folder. I'm going to say that, okay, an online service here. We've got Dynamics 365 Business Central, and here's a Business Central on premises. So you've got either one of those. In this case, I'm logged in as if I look up here, this is my Sandbox account, so SB Jeff Pergolski. that means that it should have access because I've already connected. So it is, even though you don't have to do this every time, as I said, it takes a minute to authenticate, but it's going to connect. And so, of course, if I'm looking in my test company, I've got, it looks like 5 companies here, Cronus, a couple of Cronus ones, and then Mark's got a company in there, my company, and a test company. So let's say if I just take this extended company, hitting the caret next to it is going to expand, and it's going to show me what's already there. And there's a bunch of things that are already in here for me to, and there's some of the Power BI stuff that's already been defined. It exists right here, and so that actually gives me if I want to get a let's say I want to grab a customer list. As I check the box next to it, I actually get a preview of the data, which is nice. If this wasn't what I wanted, so it's telling me, it's showing me the forms that the tables that are going to load here, transaction numbers, amounts, posting dates, and credit limits. So I've got a customer list, and let's see what's if I want to grab sales too. And right now I'm just telling Power BI what I want to grab, and what I want to do. So here's some quantities. I don't know that that's all that insightful here, but the sales pipeline one, that might be a little bit, okay, so this is just showing me the sales ID. So let's just load the item sales list and the customer list. Let me see if I can load GL budget entries, job list, job planning line. So I'm just going to pick those 2 to load for right now. And so that just takes a moment. There's not I'm getting a notification here that there are changes in the query that I've just created. So it's loading these 2 defined sets of data into Power BI. And actually, rather than waiting, let's see, I think it won't let me. All right, so over here I've got where I've already dragged, I've got the, this one, it looks like I've taken the Power BI customers, and I've got the Power BI sales header information. And essentially all I did was create something that shows available, shows balance due and available credit limit. So I can see, which companies have some available credit if maybe I was wanting to do that. So loading those 2 by adding them to the field and then just testing what sort of visualization I wanted to. So if I've got this and I ended up with a stacked area chart, but let's say I wanted to see a bar chart, I can change the visualizations right here. And again, the way this process works is to embed this into Business Central. I create it in Power BI Desktop, and then I'll take, I'll show you the next. Some of these visualizations probably don't make sense, but there is, I could go for a map. I think these are all going to be located in. Oh, you know what? So that's a foolish one, and Microsoft doesn't gray out any. That doesn't. I don't have any address information loaded in either of the data tables that I'm looking at. So I've got sales information. So of course nothing is going to show up on a map. So let me get that back to my original. But I will go to show. Let me see here. So if I want to publish this one, I'm going to go to File, and here is the Publish button. And so the process goes Publish to Power BI, and I will say yes. It should ask me to give this a unique name. So first of all, I'm going to save it before I do that. And you see the file type is a PBIX file. So that's another way to save this. And so I'll do new trial sample Power BI. I'm I'm going to save that. And then once I've got that saved, now it's publishing it to the up to the Power BI service. So now it's asking me, where do you want to publish this to? I'll publish it to my workspace because I don't have, now there's some helpful hits. You can create a portrait view of this, and so that's going to take a while that's publishing. While we're waiting for that, I'm going to go to my Power BI instance here, and let me drag this over. All right, so here I've got my workspace, and on my workspace, I've got a bunch of reports. Essentially, that's all I've created. And so I'm going to scroll down here, and you see the new trial sample Power BI is something that I just pushed up to the cloud, and that is available to other people in my organization, as long as, it should be a trivia question, as long as I have a Power BI Pro license. Now I can, it just alerted me that my new Power BI data set and visualization is ready, and I can view the data set, which I'm doing over here on the left, but I can also get quick insights into it. The quick insights are sometimes useful depending on the amount of data that you have. In this case, we don't have a lot, so it's not going to be, but I did want to show one other thing about this data, in that if we look at the sample report that I created before, it's actually just another basic graph with item ledger quantity and some sales information here. And I've actually got the same information just in two different graphs, a bar chart and a pie chart. But in terms of you can, if you create some really robust applications and you want to show it for mobile users, you want to segment your users, you can actually change the way that looks. And I will just show you, this is let me see here, I'm going to drag this and make sure it still shows up. This is my phone, and it looks like my daughter is texting me. So I'm going to, it's the problem with working in a production environment. So I'm opening Power BI, and in Power BI, I see it's taking me initially to my shared. I've got, I'm going to go to my Power BI workspace. So this is my phone Power BI mobile app. I'm going to go to my workspace, and I'm going to go to reports, and you can see all the same things that exist here. But then as I go to scroll down through this list, I've got my sample, and this is the sample that I'm looking at right here. But if you notice, this shows a little phone client here. That means that I've adjusted the view for the phone client, just because, let's say that, in the case that there's more than 2 visualizations, let's say there's 10, and so I'm going to click on that on my phone, and on my phone I've made the difference from to just show this the single visualization rather than showing both. So it's really easy to configure, and that was done in Power BI Desktop. That's where I made that change to optimize it for the mobile client. So I will get rid of that. And then we're going to launch, let me get into, drag my Business Central window over here as it is loading. And we'll just take a look around in where Power BI. So I am, let's see here, I'm at a list page view that has all of my items, and I've got some Power BI information based on sales activity. This particular unit only has 1 unit sold, so there's not a lot there. Let's see if the next unit down, let's go to something with a little more sales activity, like the swivel chair. And every time I click, there it goes. So here I've got this Power BI report, which again is out of the box, and but it is a Power BI report. So what can I do with this within Business Central? I can export it, and I can put it in focus mode. But if I get to, I can go through the different reports that exist here in terms of the item list view. There isn't a whole lot that exists. But so I'm going to go to Manage Report, and I hit the Manage Report button, and then still I'm working in Business Central. I'm not you know, in any other application, but it's going to bring me to the it's going to bring me a bigger version of this, and then in this I can start to look at you know, interact with this report. So if this was more complicated than you know, the sales history of this particular item within our organization, I could ask a question, and so, you know, let me ask a question about how, let's see. Well, here's so they're suggesting. So the common language search is something that people love about Power BI, and it's supported through. It's supported. So I'm going to use one of the. Let's see if this gives me any. Okay, so the total quantity sold. This is obviously a dollar amount, but then we've got 7 sale items within the data, and it's, you know, because I'm looking at it in a overlay mode, it's giving me, but I can interact. I guess the point I wanted to make is that I can interact with this chart as I'm you know, within Business Central. I can do it. I can also I'll get out of there. I can go to a more robust chart that is, you know, here I'm looking at another. This is another prepackaged Power BI report that comes bundled in Business Central, but I'm you know, I can switch between these two reports just on a single item page, and then, you know, that obviously goes to get to the point where I can expand that even further to you know, to more robust reports that are looking at sales history, etc. In terms of what you want to make available to Power BI beyond, so let's say, even though you looked at that list of you know, that really long list of what is already available in this in the solution in terms of like predefined queries, the way that you open these up to Power BI's to create some custom ones is through web services. And let's see, I should probably expand this the whole way because there is a there we go. So basically, these are predefined, and I'll just scroll up to the top. So these are object IDs within Business Central. It looks very similar in NAV. There is a, so you go to web services in, if you're running NAV 2018, or, you know, web services, I guess, goes back to 2013, and you define what you want this to be. So there's, you know, it gets as soon as it's created, it gets a unique object ID in NAV, but here it gives you all the OData v4 and OData standard URLs, as well as a SOAP URL if you've got that enabled. And if I want to create something new here, so these are all query views, I can hit new, and it'll put something in here. I can then define what I want this to be. Let me give you the pull down menu here. And so it can be a code unit that I'm opening up via web services, a page, or a query. I'm just going to do a query, and it's going to give it a unique object ID. I can define that. So let's say I want to, let's hope that doesn't exist. Actually, it's got some intelligence there. So I can name it whatever I want. All right, it does not like that one. But as soon as I define what this is going to contain, and let me reference a relevant object ID. So let's try one more. All right, we've got a query. It's not going to be 0. So let me grab. Okay, so I was too quickly. All right, so here within this, anything that I want to, so these are already defined, but it is, if I do select from full list, it's going to pull up essentially every object that I can, and this thing will just scroll and scroll and scroll. So there's already some predefined stuff, but if I just want to, go to, let's see, if I want the value entries associated around a specific item, if I want job ledger, I can open anything, essentially any table that exists in here. I can open up to web services, and I can use that as a connecting point. Although, to be honest, there's a whole lot of, for a particular user, you've got the lists on your role center, my vendors, my customers, my items. You can make those available through a Power BI report if you are, so anything that, I think these are like this is getting to the end of the object IDs, but pretty much any table that exists in NAV can be, or in Business Central, can be a connecting point for Power BI, and you can predefine those queries so that they are available available to you. And then, once you open this up, again, you have to have the appropriate user permissions within NAV or BC to do this. But once you've created the users with the appropriate permissions, you can open up any of this. I'm going to get out of here before I break something in our demo environment. But yeah, we know it's going to make me revert the change. So yes, I want to discard. I think just as proof that I can break things in our demo environment, I think I did break the I get to, so again, I'm back to my role center. If I look, I think I'm if I go to my settings, I think I'm in the sales and relationship manager role center. Let's go to let's see what the business manager. I'll see if earlier I broke one of the embedded Power BI reports and trying to tweak permissions. So let's see here if there's any Power BI reports. Oh, okay. So this role center has the top 5 items sold by quantity Power BI report in. Again, I can do all kinds of things here. I could go to upload a report, and that would be a it's going to be a file. And again, trivia question: what is the file format for Power BI? It's a PBIX file. But I could upload to my to my role center. I could upload a report, assuming I have the appropriate permissions right here to interact with. So that's another way to, besides creating the connections within Power BI and using web services, you can also use the Power BI desktop app to create a report that that exists on your local machine, and then you upload to Business Central through the Power BI service. So I think I've said Power BI enough to confuse everyone, but there's a lot here, and this is sort of just our first pass. There is, and let me maybe get back to the, let's see here, I'll get back to the slides just to see. So now, Angie, if you've got, I don't see anything in the chat window for questions, but there was a lot here. There's coming up in first week in June, there's a Power BI Microsoft Power Apps Summit, which is a 2-day event in Atlanta, and it is a great opportunity. The Power BI user groups are also in with the rest of the Dynamics products at User Group Summit, and that's another great way to get some cross, if you are a NAV or BC expert, to get some sort of cross training on this. But the deep dive, there's also, I think, some pre-event training on Sunday as well, the Sunday before that, and I think it's like the second weekend in June. That's an excellent opportunity for those of you that are interested in this or have started to dabble already and wonder what way you can get. I think the 2-day event is like $1,000 to attend and really get being able to interact with the people who have written the software and created a lot of the development environment around this is extremely valuable. And let me see. So Angie, any questions?
No, Jeff, none have come through.
All right, I have sufficiently confused everyone. I will just give a plug to the fact that you can always go to our website, innovia.com/events, to see what's coming up. I'm sure Angie will have, I know that we're really excited about our customer conference. Are you going to be sharing any information about that, Angie?
I will. Thank you for the presentation, Jeff. It was very well informative. If those of you that are on can't get enough of Jeff's presentation, he will be doing a session at our customer conference. So be sure to attend and attend his session as well. So we do have a webinar coming up next week on April 11th. It will be reviewing our customer conference, and the customer conference will be held on April 24th and 25th in the Wisconsin Dells. For those of you who have not attended our conference before, this would be a great webinar for you to attend. Come find out the details and the sessions taking place during our conference, and we will have an opportunity to address any questions that you may have. So register for that webinar. And so if you haven't registered for our conference, we encourage you to do so. Contact your rep or visit our conference page where it will have all the details of our conference, and that is innovia.com/conferences. This is a free event to attend, and we would love to have you. Register now. Hotel rooms are going fast. All right.
Awesome.
Thank you again, everyone, for attending, and we look forward to seeing you again soon on another Innovia webinar. Have a great day.
All right. Thanks, everyone.